You get a problem, I'll solve it.
Oh,
Check out the hook. Jason Swenk revolves.
there you go. That's awesome. What's up, agency owners? Jason Swenk here with another episode of the Smart Agency Masterclass, a podcast for the agency owner that wants to hear amazing stories of triumph and struggle and what they actually did in order to turn their agency around and really scale. And on today's episode, I have an amazing agency owner that reached almost to the 8-figure mark. They're going to go over that. And we're going to talk about when was it when they started realizing they're a real business, and what were some of the things they needed to do in order to really start scaling a lot faster. So let's go ahead and jump into the episode. Hey, Ryan, welcome to the show.
Hey, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Well, I'm excited to have you on. So tell us who you are and what do you do?
Absolutely. My name is Ryan Kutscher. I'm the founder, chief creative officer, and I guess CEO of Circus Maximus, which is we're an advertising agency, and we focus on brand narrative and content creation.
I love that name. When I was having my firstborn almost 17 years ago, my wife was like, why don't we name him Maximus? And I was like, hell yeah, Maximus Meridius Swank. I was like, this is the best name. And then she goes,
that when you can,
And then she goes, hell no, we're not naming this kid Maximus because you're going to kill him. So I was like, what about Luke? And I didn't tell her why I wanted to name Luke, so I can say, Luke, I'm your father.
I mean, look, basing your kid's name off of your favorite movie is a power move. And
yeah.
I had two. So I'm actually about to welcome a baby boy into the world in like 4 weeks. Like actually scheduling this podcast, I was like, oh no, well, let's say yes, but I don't, because it could be, he's dropping any minute.
You never know. Mine was 2 months early.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're through there. I mean, we're at 8 months. And he's allegedly supposed to arrive May 28th, which means he will be the third Gemini in this house. My wife's a Gemini. My dog is a Gemini. And my son is likely to be a Gemini. So it'll just be the 6 of us.
Very cool. Well, awesome. Well, congratulations. How'd you get started in the agency world?
Yeah. Like, I guess you mean my first job kind of thing? Like, how did I discover it?
Why did you start your agency?
Oh, why did I start my agency? I think it was a combination of feeling like I had freelanced, I had been working at really great agencies. I don't know. It was kind of like classic. This is America. You got to own your own business. I feel like I wanted to be the benefactor of the hard work that I was putting in. And I wanted a larger challenge. Through my career was always like little mini goals. I want to sell an ad. I want to sell an ad campaign, which is many ads at once. I want to sell multiple campaigns. So I'm kind of building this pyramid of I want to be a creative director over one client. I want to be a group creative director over multiple clients. I want to become an executive creative director. I want to become a chief creative officer. And it seemed like it was just building towards like, I actually want to own the thing that comes up with all the ideas that has, that kind of a vibe.
That's cool. A lot of us are kind of accidental. I always love talking to the people that actually had an intention in order to really kind of do that. Now, we were kind of talking in the pre-show when you were creating your agency and running your agency. What was it like in the very first couple years? Like before you really realized you had a business, it wasn't just something that was paying you.
Completely rudderless. And no real firm idea. Like, if you go into a market, you kind of want, just like we would advise our clients, like you've got to have a message, you've got to have a core target in mind, and you've got to have an offer that helps that client or that target go from a sucky place to an awesome place that you can facilitate. I didn't really have any of that besides, hey, I think I'm pretty good at advertising. That was kind of it. Like, who needs it? Yeah.
So let's dive into that a little bit more. So what was it like being kind of directionless? Like what was the struggles, or how to, the big thing is for the people listening, how do you know that you have a lack of direction?
Well, I think it's like when it feels like this thing's running you aren't sitting there pulling the levers and sort of going like, when you really can't identify what's going right and what's going wrong, and you have no visibility or no clarity on all of the moving parts. An advertising agency is a very dynamic thing, as all your listeners will know. There's a lot of different ways to do it. And I think if you are sitting there kind of just not sure why things are going well, why things are going poorly, what you could do to improve, how to measure it, then you don't have a very clear vision,
Yeah.
and I think that's kind of how it felt, was just a little bit like hey, if things are going great, awesome. And if things aren't, that seems, I don't know what to do about it. I guess it'll just change, and there's still elements of that in my business, but that's how I would define it, as sort of not knowing why things are happening, good or bad.
I always, on our agency mastery calls with our members, I always ask, we always start off every call with wins, and people
Mhm.
go around, they talk about their wins. And I always ask a lot of times, well, what was the reason for that? And
Yeah.
sometimes they're like, I have no idea. And
Yeah.
that's, to your point, you're like, things are happening, you don't know. And the agency owns you. You don't own the agency, which
Yeah.
is stressful. I mean,
And
like, I remember this. I mean, I got to a point where I was like, I'm going to go get a job. I'm going to close down this multi-million dollar agency. I'm going to go get a job. And I was like, and then I realized, we could do things a little bit different. What was your realization? What was your kind of like, hey, I want to own this agency?
yeah.
Walk us through that.
So there was a moment, my original business partner was a fantastic guy. We're still friends, and he runs a terrific agency. His name is Doug Cameron, and his agency is called the Doug Cameron Experience. And the reason for our partnership was the belief that he specializes in strategy, brand strategy. And the thinking was like, as a creative, this should be a good feeder. Um, but what I started to see was that it wasn't really like we weren't creating a pipeline through our specialties. We were kind of living and operating in the brand strategy world. And it just felt to me like, oh, this isn't what I want. What I want to do is create brand narratives, and then create the content that lives out there in the world. So tell the full story. And so I just could sort of feel like this isn't really the business that I want it to be. This isn't kind of flowing the way that I thought it would. And therefore I'm not able to do the things that I'm really good at or want to do, or build more of that. So it felt like we were just kind of, we were running two separate businesses under the same name. And that was a first realization of like, oh, I've got to actually build the business that I want, the way, with the people and the processes and the pipeline, um, that makes it work, that makes it, kind of brings my vision to life. And so maybe that's even a better answer to your question, is like, articulate the clear vision for what you want your business to be.
Yeah. I mean, that's what happened to me. I did the exercise I tell everybody is like, take your fist, put it on a sheet of paper, draw a circle around it. And for the first hour, just focus on all the stuff you don't like, that you don't ever want to do ever again, and everything. And then after you do that, then there's a limited number of stuff that you draw inside the circle of the stuff
Yeah.
that you should be doing, that you really like doing. And then you actually start, that formulates the vision of where the ship's actually going. So then you can actually steer it there. And most importantly, you can tell your team, so then they can actually make decisions. So they're not coming to you. Did you find that where your team was constantly coming to you before you gave them direction?
Yes, and like, to be honest, I mean, I think I still deal with that to some extent, and I think, um, I like that kind of draw around what you're good at is what you're not good at. I think that answer is like, if I've clearly articulated the vision for what we want the agency to be, and then double clicked and said, I'm clearly identifying the vision for what I want your role to be. That should ideally help separate that. And that has been very true along the way. Part of the, if there's been success, it's been in hiring people that A, get the agency vision, and then B, get the vision for their role. And that does allow me to sort of like, stay in that little circle, I guess. But, maybe you dealt with this, maybe you didn't. There are still times when it feels like, oh, we need a little help over here. Because if you're the owner, CEO, you're never really free from any of the pieces of the business. You're kind of constantly spinning those plates,
Yeah, I always looked at it as, once I set the vision, so let's say the boat's going from New York to London, and everyone knows, I'm like, well, if you don't believe and you don't want to go to London, make sure you get off here. If you do and you actually believe in what we're doing, let's continue. And then what I would do is, when people would come to me, and look, I still struggle with this sometimes. People come to me with a problem. What do we want to do? We want to, now I'm hearing the Vanilla Ice song, right? Come to me with a problem. What is it? What is that?
You get a problem, I'll solve it. Check out the Swenk revolves.
There you go. That's awesome. That should be the hook. All right, Ron, that's the hook of this podcast. All right.
Yeah.
So definitely headed that part in. But we want to jump in and solve it right away versus training your team to be like, kind of, we talk about this in our agency mastery, 131. Come to me with one problem. What are 3 options that you're thinking about? And what's the thing that you would actually recommend? And you do that enough, they're going to stop coming to you for everything. They're going to be like, man, I'm not coming to Jason. He always puts it back on me. I can solve this.
Yeah.
And then they don't hear the Vanilla Ice song.
Man, it's really good. I think a few things have helped along the way. One is, like you said, articulate the vision of the agency. And I'll recommend a book that I read called Vivid Vision. It's by a guy named Cameron Herold. He's the chief operating officer of 1-800-GOT-JUNK, and has now kind of dedicated his life to this idea of the vivid vision and helping businesses articulate that. Part of that process that's also super duper helpful is articulating the 4 values. You could have 5, you could have 3 that are core to the agency or your business.
They're really core to you, though, don't you think?
Yeah, and I think they're ultimately an extension of me. So I can rattle off our 4 at Circus Maximus. Diversity is our strength. If it isn't interesting, it doesn't matter. Always find a better way. And the last one is, what did I say? It's
diversity.
Diversity is our strength. It doesn't matter. Always find a better way. Integrity above all. So those 4, basically, like, if you feel that conflict, that something isn't working right, I go back to those 4 and I go, which one of these is being violated? And I've used it. Those, I would say, are an extension of my personal ethos. They always find a better way relates to what you were saying about the 131, where it's like, that's the expectation that the people that work at our agency are problem solvers, not problem deliverers, Now, it's not so easy to just sort of say that. I've also used the Socratic method, where it's,
what's that?
So the Socratic
big
method,
words around me, I don't understand.
I just learned about it through my Vistage group, and we can talk about that too. It's not a plug. But the Socratic method is basically a way of asking questions to get to answers. And so you sort of fight that instinct you were talking about me wanting to give you the solution. If you, Jason, come to me and you go like, I'm not sure how we're going to get new clients. And then I say, like, if we wanted to get new clients, what's a reasonable timeline? Well, 3 months. You start answering. If we wanted to get clients that played to our strengths, what would we do? And you start kind of wheels start turning, and we would probably, maybe we would look at the case studies that we've already got and sort of see who those would be relevant to. Okay. And if we wanted to reach out to those kinds of clients, where would we find them? Well, maybe we would find them at conferences, or maybe we would find them on LinkedIn. You start basically asking the questions that help the person that you're talking to basically come to the conclusion they already know the answers. We all already know the answers. But by asking those questions, it transfers the responsibility to them. And that's kind of like what you were saying about the 1-3-1. You've created a framework by which you bring me basically a solution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, once you do that, and I always warn people too on this, as you train your team to do the 1-3-1, or that hard word I will even try to pronounce. I'm not the most educated man, but
That's all. Yeah.
but as you train
It's
them,
from Socrates. So that's what I heard. Socrates developed this methodology, and that's why it's the Socratic method.
oh,
I just learned about it 2 weeks ago.
I remember
So,
that now, sort of.
yeah.
But as you implement this kind of framework, just remember, people will stop coming to you, and then what you're going to feel is insignificant.
Yeah.
But you've done this. You're not needed for those little things anymore. You're needed for other things. Like, you're supposed to be coaching and mentoring your team. You're supposed to be setting the vision and making sure they understand it. You should be creating content like we're doing now. You should be understanding the KPIs and the financials to see what is the pivot point of up or down that you need to know about, and build key relationships. I mean, that's what I look at as, the role of really transforming from the owner to the CEO. And when you do that, you'll be depressed for a couple weeks, couple months. You just got to remember, hey, it needs me to get over there. Because like I was telling you, we were talking in the pre-show, it was like, an agency that can get over 3 million is not by accident, right? Now it's scaling. You have systems, there's never a perfect formula or anything like that. And everyone's different, but to get to, close to 8 figures is not by accident. Like, you can get by accident to 1 million, easy, maybe even 2, but above that, you have to have real systems in place. So let's go over kind of 1 or 2 other systems that you have, and then we'll wrap up the show.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, just to touch on, I guess, what you're saying, and this literally a transition. I've been doing this now 10 years. This year's anniversary is 10 years. And it really only feels like a lot of the stuff that you're talking about, that we're talking about, started to come into clarity 2 years ago. So I screwed around for a long time. And have gotten lucky in that time that I was given the time and given enough success to start to realize, like, oh, I got to put these systems in place. And that transition that you're talking about feels to me like, people will say you go from working in the business to working on the business. And that transition is definitely where I want to be. I'm not here to tell anyone that I've nailed it or figured it out, because I think it's nonlinear. Like last year was a terrific year. This year, as I mentioned in the pre-call, it's a real punch in the face. And so what's fascinating is, like, all the systems in place that you're talking about. Last year they were working. This year they're not. But we haven't changed what we're doing. So it's a really, like, other CEOs, other people that work in the industry might feel this way. It can feel very confusing and very lonely when you had a thing that was kind of like humming, and then suddenly, through whatever circumstances may be, now it's not working as well. And that's where I guess you go back to the systems, though, and trusting them.
Let's dive into that, because I find that interesting. And I think a lot of people are going through that, right? You've been on a trajectory, or Darby, our agency scale specialist, was making fun of me. They're like, trajectory, that's not a word. Like, that's in the Urban Dictionary, but
all words were made up at some point. So it's a word now.
It's a Swenkism, I guess, right? So, we're all on that growth rate. And then we hit that turbulence where we are going down, right? And what do you like in your psyche? What are you thinking going, oh my God, like, are we going down to the very bottom? Are we going to hit the ground?
Yeah.
Like, what gets you over that? Because there's a lot of people going through that.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm going through it. So I think what gets me over that is some of the stuff like this podcast, super helpful to remember the journey that we've been on. Speaking with other like that member group, there's about 15 CEOs in there. All of them have dealt with this in some shape or form. And it's somewhat reassuring to know that that's what this is. We could all be, like you said, like, yeah, I could go work for someone else. I'm a pretty good writer. I'm a good creative director. I could probably make a good salary doing it. But we've chosen this direction, and part of that choice involves inheriting unhappy days. I think it's good to commiserate. I think it's good to reach out to the network. I think if you have a business coach, I'm looking for one. I have a business group that I'm in. I want all the help that I can get. And sometimes that help is just about being able to speak candidly. Like a lot of these conversations, you can't have them with your creative director. You can't have them with your people because it's not their problem. It's not their remit. And so if you can find people outside of your agency that are in a similar seat, I think that's very helpful. Sometimes it's talking about, opportunities that you could have to make the agency run better. Sometimes it's just literally going like, hey, what is going on? What are you guys dealing with? What are you seeing? I've got a friend that runs an agency in Chattanooga. It's called Humanot. His name is David Littlejohn. Fantastic agency. We're similar agencies in a lot of ways. But what's interesting, we're almost the same age, meaning agency age is both about 10 years old. And I've seen where it's like, he's had these terrific years and I've had medium years. And then I've had a great year and he had a medium year. And it's really helpful to like call him up and be like, bro, how did you get through this? Like what was your mindset? And it's like, we're all doing breath work and meditation and whatever it takes, man. Whatever it takes to get through, so there's the business side and then there's the psychological side, and it's a journey. It's like I wish, there are days when my wife listens to me and is just like, man, it's what you do is really, really hard. And it is hard, but
yeah, I always hear from our agency mastermind members, a lot of times they're like, look, I like hearing other people are struggling. Yeah. So it makes me feel a little bit normal because just like you were saying, they can't go to your VP and go, man, I think we're going under. Like, what would you do?
They'd be like, go get a new job is what I would do.
Exactly. Right. And that was the point where I got when my wife said, go get a job and just shut down the agency. And that was the punch in the face. But what I also realized, and I think this will help out a lot of you all listening, is this. When things start going bad, you sometimes got to step back for a second, take a breath and assess, right? Like right now I'm going through and getting my pilot's license. And one of the things that they say is when something goes wrong, don't overreact really quick. It's like kind of assess the situation, figure out what needs to happen. And then what actually gave me confidence in executing is really kind of develop a strategy in order to see if it's going to work. And everything's a test. But if I had a plan rather than waiting for, I think it's going to turn around or maybe this will happen. Like, no, I'm going to execute a plan or chat with other people in the mastermind and be like, all right, what's the plan? What's the plan that you worked? What's the plan you did? What's the plan you did? And then kind of develop my own. Now I have more confidence. And another thing I'll tell everybody to do, I heard this from my buddy Dan. He was chatting about this earlier. I was like, oh my God, this is great. And he talks about if your agency was bought tomorrow, what would the outside company do? and that's
Yeah.
what you should be focusing on. And I was like, right? Like we just get
Yeah.
so reactive to what's coming to us rather than being proactive and getting ahead of it, realizing that things are going to go up, things are going to go down. It's the same, like it's just a different path up to the top of the mountain. You know, once you get up there, great views, but you still got to climb another mountain. There's always another
Always
one.
sounds like Danny gave you the old Socratic method there.
Yeah,
Yes.
probably.
Just that ask you the question, but I think it goes back to kind of where you started this interview about like you got to have some plan. It might not be the best plan, but it's a plan, and you can improve it from there. And you can sort of, once that plan's in place, you sort of see what parts of it are working, what parts of it aren't, whose help do you need, from your employees, from your partners, from your extended network, from your bank, wherever, it's, the journey is one part business and one part personal though, too, like you said, like just taking that breath and sort of assessing. And it's, I think everyone, well, maybe not everyone, but a lot of people this year are definitely feeling like, yeah, we're at the bottom of a business cycle, and everything feels a little bit up in the air, from Chat GPT to politics to the business to supply economics.
So you watch too much news. I could tell you watch the news all the time, don't you?
I talk about the news. I don't watch any news. I read only.
Oh, you should not. You shouldn't even do that. Honestly, like
You're right, actually. It's like, and then, yeah,
because I'll tell you this, like I really stopped watching the news. I only turn into like the last 5 minutes of the news because that's when they go over the good stuff. Like, hey, look at how this person saved this baby from this train, right? Versus,
yeah.
the world is doomed and ChatGPT is taking over everything. Like who cares about that? Like, or they're like, I started my first agency in 99, went through the dot bomb, went through 9/11, went through '08, went through COVID, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't care. Like, there's always going to be people spending money and needing money. And those resourceful people will figure that out, right? And that's part of your guys' core values. So that's kind of why I always say, like I could tell when people watch the news, because then I could tell when they're stressing and they're like chest is tightening up because they're like, man, well, world's coming to an end. AI is going to replace me. And I'm like, no, it's not. Like, it's literally, you have a huge opportunity because I can guarantee you all your competitors are thinking about that.
And that goes back to what you were just saying, like about the be able to take a deep breath. I mean, I'm victimized if I, by myself looking too much at this stuff, and we're reactive animals. So the more stuff that you beam into your face, the more you're going to react to. And as you just kind of pointed out, reaction is not the way.
No, it just stresses you out. It puts more on your shoulders, right? Like I'm trying to take less off or take more off, and just focus on one thing. I was getting interviewed on a podcast yesterday. They were like, "What's one piece of advice?" I was like, "Focus, finish one commitment till success." That's what it stands for, and it's just like, do that, focus on that plan, and that's it, and then execute it and make the variations and the changes to it. And, you'll go up, you'll go down. Like, okay, but it's like, we're never going to win the game. We're just trying to stay in the game.
Yeah. I feel sure, because there is no real stay. It is big,
Yeah. Well, this has all been amazing, Ryan. Is there anything I didn't ask you that you think would benefit the listeners listening in?
Oh man, I think we got into it today. I liked it.
Cool.
It was good. That was a reflection of where I'm at right now. So I liked it.
Awesome. What's the agency website people go and check you guys out?
You can go to circusmaximus.com. And for any agency listeners out there, if you want to commiserate, hit me up. You can find me.
Awesome. We'll go check them out. Thanks so much, Ryan, for coming on the show. And if you guys enjoyed this episode and you want to be in a community of like-minded agency owners that understand what you're going through, that can show you the strategies that work for them currently, not 10 years ago, and really be able to help coach and guide you to give you more confidence. I'd love to all of you to go check out agencymastery360.com. And also, we just launched our free masterclass where we're starting to give away everything we know for free. Like that, it's it. So go to agencymastery360.com/attract, and you'll get the first masterclass on everything that we chatted about today, and a lot of really amazing resources that will help you out. And we're not going to ask you for anything but your email address. And why? So we can email you. So until next time, have a swank day.